No respect, no voice, no escape from mother-in-law judgment. Welcome to life as a samurai's wife in feudal Japan, where your husband's honor was worth more than your existence, and where the phrase "till death do us part" was taken so seriously that you might be expected to stab yourself if he died first. Meet Sachiko Zumoto, the 20-year-old bride of Ichiro Kato, a mid-ranking samurai serving the daimyo of Ekizen province in 1683. Sachiko's marriage was arranged when she was 13, and after 7 years of preparation to be the perfect wife, she finally married Ichiro last spring. Now she's learning that all her training barely prepared her for the absurd realities of samurai wife life. Sachiko's day begins at dawn, several hours before her husband wakes. In samurai households, wives were expected to rise first and retire last. While Ichiro dreams of glorious battles he'll probably never see, Sachiko has already rekindled the hearth fire, prepared breakfast ingredients, and begun organizing the day's household duties. The concept of sleeping in won't be invented for roughly 300 more years. My mother warned me that marriage would be difficult, Sachiko whispers to herself while grinding rice for the morning meal. But she failed to mention I'd be serving 3 masters instead of 1. Those 3 masters? Her husband, his mother, and the crushing weight of samurai society's expectations. The irony isn't lost on her that while samurai were the warrior elite who commanded respect throughout Japan, their wives existed in a state of perpetual subservience that would make a peasant woman wince. By mid-morning, Sachiko has already navigated her first daily challenge. Breakfast with her mother-in-law, Tomo Kato, a woman whose dedication to tradition makes Buddhist monks look flexible. The pickled vegetables are slightly too salty today, Tomo notes, somehow making this sound like a failure equivalent to losing a major battle. And your hair ornament is tilted 2 degrees to the left. The wife of a samurai must embody perfection in all things. Sachiko bows deeply. I will correct these failures immediately, honorable mother. What Sachiko doesn't say, perhaps if you stopped hovering over me like a hungry hawk, I wouldn't shake salt everywhere. Historical accuracy break. Samurai wives were expected to maintain absolute composure and dignity at all times. The slightest display of emotion or imperfection could bring shame not just on themselves but on their husbands. Many samurai wives lived under the watchful eyes of their mothers-in-law, who had endured the same treatment in their youth and were now determined to enforce tradition with merciless precision. By midday, Ichiro has departed for his duties at the daimyo's compound, leaving Sachiko to manage the household finances, one of her few domains of actual authority. Contrary to the stereotype of helpless noblewomen, samurai wives were expected to be financial wizards, stretching their husbands' stipends to maintain a household befitting their status. Today, Sachiko stares at the account books with mounting dread. Ichiro's rice stipend hasn't increased in 3 years, yet they're expected to host an elaborate dinner for his superior officer next month. Somehow, she must create a feast fit for nobility using resources that barely keep them above peasant status. Perhaps we could sell some of the ceremonial armor Ichiro never wears, she muses, then immediately banishes the thought, suggesting the sale of samurai equipment would dishonor her husband, even if said equipment was gathering dust and they were eating millet instead of rice. Instead, she carefully records every mon spent, trying to find corners to cut that won't be visible to judgmental guests. Samurai wives couldn't just be good with money. They had to perform financial miracles while maintaining the illusion that such concerns were beneath their dignity. Afternoon brings weapons maintenance, because nothing says traditional female duties, like cleaning instruments of death. While peasant women might be busy with spinning or weaving, Sachiko kneels in the family armory, meticulously oiling her husband's second-best katana. A samurai's soul is in his sword, Ichiro often reminds her. The care you show his weapons is the care you show his spirit. No pressure there. Historical accuracy break. Samurai wives were indeed responsible for maintaining their husband's armor and sometimes even their weapons. They were expected to understand the symbolic and practical importance of each piece, ensuring everything was immaculate and ready for use at a moment's notice. This task was considered a sacred duty and any neglect was a serious dishonor. The real challenge comes when Sachiko accidentally discovers a small spot of rust on a rarely used tanto knife. She freezes, heart pounding. In some samurai households, such negligence might earn her a beating. In others, a husband might merely subject her to days of silent contempt. Somehow worse. Sachiko frantically works to remove the blemish, knowing that her marriage exists in a strange paradox. She is both essential to her husband's success and completely expendable should she fail in her duties. The life of a samurai wife is like balancing on the edge of a blade. Her mother once told her, "Perfect balance brings honor. A single misstep brings blood." Evening approaches, bringing with it the most treacherous part of Sachiko's day: social obligations. Tonight, several other samurai and their wives are visiting for a poetry gathering. An event that's 1 part cultural enrichment, 3 parts political maneuvering, and 5 parts psychological warfare between the wives. Before the guests arrive, Tomo inspects Sachiko's appearance with the intensity of a general reviewing troops. "Your obi is acceptable," she pronounces, which in mother-in-law language is practically effusive praise. "Remember to serve the superior's wife first. Laugh appropriately at the men's jokes. And for heaven's sake, don't recite any poetry that outshines your husband's. The last time you did that, he couldn't look his commander in the eye for a week." Ah yes, another delightful challenge of samurai wife life. Being educated enough to converse intelligently but never so intelligent that you embarrass your husband. Many samurai wives were more literate than their warrior husbands, having been trained in classical literature, calligraphy, and poetry since childhood. But publicly displaying this knowledge was a dangerous game. Historical accuracy break. Education for samurai women was surprisingly comprehensive, including literary classics, mathematics for household accounting, music, and even some philosophy. However, this education was meant to make them better household managers and more appealing companions, not independent thinkers. They were expected to use their knowledge to enhance their husband's reputation, never to build one of their own. The poetry gathering proceeds with the careful choreography of a kabuki play. Sachiko serves tea with movements so refined they appear effortless, the result of thousands of hours of practice. She laughs demurely at appropriate moments, offers subtle compliments to each guest, and recites one carefully mediocre poem about autumn leaves that receives just enough approval without drawing too much attention. Meanwhile, she's silently counting how many of her husband's sake cups she's refilled, knowing that her evening duties will vary significantly depending on that number. The wives exchange glances that communicate entire conversations. Sympathy, rivalry, warnings about which husband might be prone to anger when drunk, which wife is currently in disgrace. When the guests finally depart near midnight, Sachiko begins the exhausting process of returning the house to perfect order before she can sleep. Ichiro, now pleasantly drunk on sake she can never enjoy publicly, watches her work. "You did well tonight," he tells her, which is the closest thing to affection she's likely to receive. "Takemura-san's wife looked positively shabby next to you." Sachiko bows, hiding her exhaustion. "It is my honor to bring respect to your household." What she doesn't say: "I've been awake for 19 hours straight. My feet are numb from kneeling, and I've spent the day performing a balancing act that would make acrobats weep." But the final absurd challenge of the samurai wife's existence is perhaps the most existentially horrifying. The knowledge that should her husband die, whether in battle or from a bad batch of fugu, she might be expected to follow him into the afterlife, literally. While not universal, the practice of junsher, ritual suicide following a husband's death, was a very real possibility for samurai wives. Nothing says devoted spouse quite like disemboweling yourself with a tanto knife to demonstrate your loyalty to a corpse. As Sachiko finally prepares for bed in the pre-dawn hours, she wonders if her mother-in-law would insist on junsher should something happen to Ichiro. Tomo has often praised the beautiful devotion of a cousin who followed her husband in death last year. These bedtime thoughts are brought to you by feudal Japanese gender politics. The bitter irony of the samurai wife's existence is that while she's essential to maintaining the household that enables her husband's service to his lord, her own value is measured largely by her willingness to vanish, either metaphorically through perfect, invisible service or literally through death. Sachiko lies down on her futon, bones aching, as the first hints of dawn light appear. Soon it will be time to rise and begin again. She closes her eyes for her precious few hours of sleep, comforting herself with the darkest humor available to women of her station. At least if I die of exhaustion, she thinks, nobody will expect me to stab myself afterward.